Good afternoon and welcome to the Southern Ontario Sports Podcast. Today is Monday, October 6, 2014. I'm Adam Thomas with co-host Steve Resnick. Another busy week in sports, but first, Steve, how are you? How was your weekend?
Doing well. It's just enjoying the last few warm days here in Toronto before it gets real chilly. Caught some of the Raptors' first preseason game in Vancouver, so nice throwback to Raptors-Grizzlies days maybe. And yourself?
Yeah, doing well, thank you. Enjoyed quite a bit of football, I guess, this weekend again. That was probably my highlight. Interesting to see the 49ers beat the Chiefs. New Orleans wins in OT. Cleveland pulls out a win, and a bunch of others. We'll get into a few of them here. So why don't we get right into it, of course, with the hometown Bills sneaking one out with their lives on the line. Last-second field goal in Detroit to take the win, go to 3-2 on the season. Steve, your thoughts on that game?
Well, I don't think anyone was predicting the Bills to win, especially with Kyle Orton at quarterback playing in Detroit. So for them to pull out that W on the road, very big win for them. Gets them back over 500. They're at 3-2 now with a big first place online game with the Pats coming up next week. That being said, though, I don't know if you'd like to play all your games that close with that type of offense leading you the whole way. I think going forward, they might want to expect a little bit more from Mr. Orton.
Yeah, and he's the talk of the day. So what do you feel about 308 yards, a touchdown, a pick leading to 6 points on the board with the pick six? Is this good enough going forward for the Bills, or is that lack of touchdown to interception ratio, is that really discouraging to you, Steve?
I don't know if it's so much discouraging, but he didn't seem to be wanting to take any major risks. And with the Bills, I think they're going to have to, especially with Sammy Watkins and even CJ Spiller. You've got some good weapons there to try to even do some trick plays, let alone some long shots. That being said, though, you still need someone who's going to be responsible, and at least Orton's got that for him versus E.J. Manuel. That being said, though, you only gave E.J. Manuel 14 games, so who knows if you're writing him off too soon, if he's just developing. Only time will tell with that, though.
Yeah, I don't think EJ Manuel will find his way off the bench very quickly. I think they're going to work with Orton for a bit. Manuel hadn't played a whole lot, but he's also looking a little shaky when he is in there, and maybe some of his issues from his college days creeping back up. The accuracy, I think, had hurt him a bit, and Orton seemed to really zone in on Sammy Watkins, who I think can be really productive if he gets the looks. He had two ridiculous grabs in this game. I couldn't quite believe he actually squeezed the ball on the two of them. One was late in the first quarter. It was kind of on his fingertips. Pulled it back in, and he's going to be able to do that for hopefully a long time for the Bills. So that was really awesome to see. Of course, this 3-2 Bills team will host the New England Patriots next week. Maybe before we make a call on that game, let's talk a little bit about the Pats. Tom Brady showed up and played much better than he has recently. Your thoughts on his play, the team's return to a more typical New England Patriots squad?
Yeah, well, the stats for Brady weren't anything outlandish with only 292 yards and a couple touchdowns. But if you watch the game, especially from the beginning, you could see that pretty much no one was going to stop Tom Brady from getting down the field and getting in the end zone. He looked pretty determined. Looked none too pleased with how he had to deal with the media all week, saying he might be getting past his prime and maybe it's time for him to maybe even hit the bench. But seeing how they went, it seemed like they were back in their destructive New England Patriots mode, and I felt pretty bad at times for the defense trying to stop him out there.
Yeah, absolutely. The tight end game between Gronk and Tim Wright, newly acquired from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, was pretty devastating. I don't know if the Bengals were expecting that or not, but they got hit hard by those two throughout. The other question comes up then, and the team's fumbled around a little bit, but now that New England's played a couple good quarters and their offensive lines looked a lot stronger, do you think that's really the secret? Because they gave Tom Brady all sorts of time last night.
Yeah, you got to figure if Tom Brady has any time, even if he doesn't have the best receiving core that he's had in the past, he's going to be able to hit his guys and he's going to be able to get his team down the field, especially as you said with Tim Wright coming in there now with two capable tight ends. it looks like he's got even more weapons. And if Stephen Ridley can keep holding onto the ball the way he is, I like their chances to once again come out of the division.
So that brings us to our wrap-up question on the Patriots-Bills dynamic. Right now, the Bills are technically in first place in the division. Got to be the first time we're saying that in quite some time at the Week 5 marker. So they host a New England Patriots team next week who obviously are rebounding. Does Buffalo have it in them to win next week, or are they going to get squashed by the up-and-coming Patriots?
I think Buffalo's going to keep it close. The home crowd will be with them. It'll give them some more energy. But that being said, I don't think Dan Carpenter or any 58-yard field goals are going to be able to win it this week.
I think you're probably on the money there, Steve. I imagine Tom Brady will find a way to beat the traditionally beatable Bills. They found a way to win this past week, whereas they might normally find a way to lose. But they will be tested, I think, by Tom Brady. He's familiar with the arena. He's familiar with what he's going to feel from the fans, which isn't going to be a whole lot of love. And I think he's going to be good for it on Sunday by at least a field goal, if not a touchdown. All right, moving along, we'll take a look at another AFC team, the Denver Broncos, throwing up points last night. Like, really, the Arizona defense, for what they've been able to accomplish to this point in the season, was really quite poor on their behalf. Manning goes for his 500 TDs. Demaryius Thomas lights up the scorebox. Emmanuel Sanders has a good game. They do lose Monty Ball. But can this team be stopped, Steve? The Broncos looking unbeatable.
Yeah, it's hard to say that offense looks like it's going to slow down anytime soon, especially with Arizona, like you're saying, having such a vaunted defense. And for Manning to just torch them the way he did, I think he had over 450 yards, just unstoppable, really, especially, again, you're saying Demaryius Thomas over 200 yards. Just a real dominant effort. And even with the injury to Monte Ball, I don't think, if they have to pass more, I don't think that's a real hindrance to the offense so long as the O-line holds up the way it has been.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable. Peyton's march to 500 touchdowns. He's the fastest player. Well, he's only the second after Brett Favre, but he is the fastest player to reach the mark. And since arriving in Denver, it's been remarkable to see his touchdown production on a weekly basis. And I think you're right. Do they lose much if they lose a run game? Probably not. Peyton's more than capable of leading the offense with the weapons they have around him, especially a healthy Welker. So the question comes, are they a Super Bowl contender at Week 5 in this season?
I would say yes, although coming up, they do have the Jets next week, which you figure they're going to roll over them. But after that, they've got San Francisco, San Diego, and New England. So 3 pretty tough games, all against good opponents. So while I say yes now, I think I'll wait to lock in my answer until after that game against New England a few weeks down the road.
That's fair. I will lock in for certain. I think if you're talking about teams that are ultimately going to win divisions and be in a playoff position, the Broncos are going to be right there with whoever the best of them amounts to be. So I would personally bet on them. And speaking of teams that are expected to be there, the Cincinnati Bengals playing the losing side in the game on Sunday Night Football last night. Andy Dalton might be under a little criticism after this performance, not really doing a whole lot to help. In my opinion, the team looked flat in general. They didn't necessarily seem prepared. Andy Dalton, is he the franchise QB they want them to be? Or are they spending time on a guy who's only going to get them to the first round and nothing more?
Yeah, it's hard to say. He sometimes, he looks like if he can keep up his consistency, he's going to be that guy for them and lead them the way Joe Flacco might have with the Ravens. That being said, though, in prime time, he's a career 2-4. In the playoffs, he's got career 0-3. So while the Bengals look like they've put their faith behind him, he still has really yet to prove that he can be that guy in those big games. Although last night I don't think you can pin on him exclusively, and I don't know if anyone's going to be able to stop the Pats the way they were going last night. But I still think if you're Andy Dalton with a guy like A.J. Green, a running back, that Giovanni Bernard that you've got there, I think you've got enough weapons that if you can't make it out of the first round of the playoffs this year, that you might want to start looking in a different direction.
Yep, it is something I think they will have to consider, but I will give Andy Dalton a little more time myself as well. A little confused why they didn't pass out of the backfield a little more frequently to the aforementioned Giovanni Bernard. He's been great with his hands in the passing game this season, and I thought they could have exploited that a little bit more, especially when things slowed down for their offense, and they couldn't generate a whole lot. But that we'll finish off our chat here about the Cincinnati Bengals and maybe just discussing the division quickly. Do you think they can hold on, even with the loss this weekend? They are only 3-1, still leading the division with a game in hand over both Baltimore and Pittsburgh. Steve, who do you like to come out of the AFC North?
I think Cincinnati is still the favorite to come out of there. They definitely have less question marks than either the Ravens, the Steelers, or the Browns. That being said, though, both Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland, they've all shown capable of winning games this year. And you never know those in-division games, how they can turn out, even with the Browns versus the Bengals. So while I would still pick Cincinnati, I wouldn't be utterly shocked to see them not win the division.
Yep, I think they will hold on as well. Pittsburgh, their defense scares me too much. I just don't know if they can hold up to the full schedule, letting up the number of points they let up. The offense is capable in Pittsburgh, but I don't know if it can cover up that defense week in, week out. As for the Browns and Ravens, I'm more inspired by the Ravens, less inspired by the Browns, but good on the Browns for being a 2-2. The Ravens might be Cincinnati's truest competition, and I could see them sneaking it out, but I will stay with the Bengals and a game in hand at this point. So in saying all that, we will move on to a little discussion on the MLB playoffs. Steve, since we were last on the air 7 days ago, quite a bit has transpired. Actually, I will quickly grab an update here if you bear with me on the San Francisco-Washington game in play right now.
Yeah, hopefully no one goes back and listens to my Tigers pick from last week. So from now on, I will not be picking the Detroit Tigers. I've learned my lesson.
Well, we'll touch on that in a second, but I suppose you were wrong there, Steve, just to be fair about it. Now, again, I picked the Nationals, and in speaking of the Nationals, they are up 3-0 after a big seventh inning, 3-run inning. So they are beating the Giants. Looks like Doug Fister is still in there, if I'm not mistaken. Same can be said for Madison Baumgartner as well. So we'll see how that finishes up by the end of this taping. But go Nationals, keep my pick alive, and I'll be happy. But let's refocus here. Pardon me for a second. Got a little off track. But since we last taped, Steve, we have had the AL decided. Kansas City sweeping the Angels. Baltimore sweeping your Tigers. Let's start with the Royals. What I can only describe, I think, fairly as a team of destiny at this point. And if we were to recast our ballot, I'm going to throw it at the Royals because every once in a while, a team like this, they find a way, it just falls into place, and next thing you know, they're hoisting a championship banner. Your thoughts on the Royals and Angels?
Yeah, when you have Billy Butler stealing bases, you pretty much have to say it's all going your way at that point in time. The way that the Royals, the least amount of home runs, the least amount of walks, I think the first team to make the playoffs in a long time having that. And they're just finding ways to win games through their stolen bases, their bunting, their questionable managerial decisions that Ned Yost hears lots about from every angle. That being said, though, with their lack of home runs, first round series, 2 home runs by Hosmer, 2 by Moustakas. So when they need them, they're coming up clutch. And on the other hand, the Angels, Mike Trout, afraid to start the series. Much the same for Pujols and Hamilton. Not much you can do when you can't score any runs.
Yeah, that's pretty much the story. Interestingly, I took a look at the way the playoffs have broken down so far, with so many games being so close, extra innings here and there, etc. The Royals against the Angels actually finished with a differential of plus 10 runs for, which in relative terms makes them look like a hitting powerhouse. But I think they've just got Lady Luck on their side, and I like them going forward. As you mentioned, the Angels, though, may have a couple issues moving forward. They've got a lot of money tied up in Josh Hamilton, who didn't do a whole lot for them throughout the year. Pujols as well, maybe showing a little age. Your thought on the Angels going forward, Steve?
Yeah, with Josh Hamilton, the next 3 years alone, he's making 25 million, then 32 the next year after, and 32 the one following that. So there's a lot of money there, and while Artie Moreno can afford it, and will probably sign even more free agents in the interim, you got to wonder what they're going to do with that spot in the lineup. They've got to find a replacement at some point if he can't pick it up. Also with Pujols, while he's just slightly declining from his normal numbers this year after a couple off years once he got to Anaheim, he's only going to get worse with age as it's looking so far. So again, that's another hole you're going to need to fill. Even with Mike Trout, I'm not too set on the Angels' chances perennially going forward.
Yeah, I mean you have to love Mike Trout, but beyond that, there are some question marks. Not necessarily the most reliable pitching staff in the world either, and again, a lot of money tied up with maybe less productive player time. And so it does make you wonder. I think they are due for regression next year, so we will see how that plays out. And we'll jump over from there to the Baltimore-Detroit series. Why don't you take this one over, Steve? Your thoughts?
Well, my thought, Pinky Detroit, was their starting pitching was going to be enough to take them through. And I really don't think you can fault the Detroit starters in this series. Putting out Scherzer, Verlander, and Price, it's going to be hard to beat those. So beat those guys. So if you can keep it close, you got to give credit to the Orioles and credit where it's due. But it's really the Detroit bullpen, I think, where it's the real dumpster fire, as many people have been calling it. Joba Chamberlain, Joe Nathan, Soria, pretty much anyone they brought out, they just couldn't get an out, especially when they needed it. First game, eighth inning of game one, giving up 9 runs. Then, of course, in game 2, blowing in the bottom of the 8th, pretty much just ruining their chances right there, getting down 0-2. So that pretty much sealed the deal for them, being unable to keep it close once their Cy Young winners got out of the game.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing for me, I think, from this whole playoff stretch so far is really the pitchers. And we'll probably even get into this a little bit further with the 2 NL series. But the lack of effectiveness from Detroit's pitching overall, are you going to need those aces to pitch 9 innings for you? Is that the only way to get it done? Some of the other teams are getting pretty close to that on a nightly basis. And it is perhaps making the difference. But in the case for Detroit, you're absolutely right. Just unfortunate bullpen issues, and that's leaving them looking from the outside in. Quick word on Delman Young and his overall clutchness. He does show up when they need a play out there in Baltimore.
Yeah, another big hit. Won them game 2 with that bases clearing double in the bottom of the 8th, and seemingly every postseason he shows up after being almost non-existent in the regular season with at least 1 or 2 big hits. And going forward, you have to like his spot in the lineup, especially if Chris Davis isn't coming back for the Orioles, and probably has a chance to produce a couple more big hits coming up in the ALCS.
So with that, we will jump over to the National League. We start off with San Francisco, Washington, which is potentially one of the deepest pitching battles in the playoffs. If the score stands, Washington will take this series 2-1 and avoid the sweep. Steve, do you think the Nationals can make it out of this thing, or is this the Giants?
Well, the series has been very close. I mean, if you play an 18-inning game, that's decided 2-1. I think it's clear that both teams have extensively good pitching staffs. So any game the Nationals starter, whoever they throw out there, really can shut down the Giants lineup as good as they are. That being said, though, the Giants, they really do seem like a team of destiny. This would be their first loss after 10 straight wins in the playoffs. They always seem to get those clutch hits, and it's an even year, so you figure based on 2012 and 2010 that they're probably going to win the World Series if that's what you're betting on.
I do love their starting rotation, but I will stick with the Nationals to find a way out of this one. It might be a tall order, but they've got some nice pitching stock as well. Shout out to Yusmeiro Petit, though, for the Giants. Played real well down the stretch for me in my fantasy baseball pool, so I appreciate that. Okay, let's spend a little time talking about St. Louis, LA Dodgers, and the Clayton Kershaw meltdown, Adam Wainwright meltdown that was.
Yeah, I don't think anyone was expecting Game One to finish 10-9, regardless of who won that game. Seeing Kershaw melt down like that after having such a ridiculous season was pretty unexpected. But he's the first ever pitcher now with back-to-back playoff starts with 7 earned runs. So you have to wonder if there's something there. Maybe with the pressure, you just at this point you just can't do it. Who knows? You got to figure it's something. Considering almost every other time out there, he's almost unhittable. That being said, though, the Dodgers were still able to hit Wainwright, although they did come up short that game. I still think that series is very up for grabs, even though St. Louis has the home field. So we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's the kind of game you turn into, and you just want to see, strikeout after strikeout, ground ball, pop fly, whatever. You just want to see a nice pitcher's duel, and it was anything but as billed. But it is leading to the series being up for grabs, with the two aces off the mound. Where do you think this series falls, Steve?
I think the Dodgers will take it in five. I think if they can get Kershaw getting Game 5, there's no chance he's going to have another bad game.
Yeah, and I think it's tough to win two in a row. I don't think there's any guarantee on that. So if they two teams split both games coming up, I would like the Dodgers to go through as well, squaring us up for the Royals and Orioles in the AL. Who do you like going forward there, Steve?
I'm going to take the Orioles. I know the Royals, team of destiny, America's sweethearts right now, but Buck Showalter, he's pushing all the right buttons. I think they've got it. They've got just depth throughout the lineup. I like their chances.
And I am going Kansas City Royals. Over in the National League, if we presume that the Giants do hold on to what will maybe be a 2-1 lead and advance through, and we call the Dodgers as the advancing team, who do you like between Giants Dodgers?
Well, the people who get the most hits will probably be the security in the parking lots for those games. But I think if it comes down to that series, I think you're going to have to take the Giants. I don't like the Dodgers' chances against such an experienced playoff team in them.
That's a fair answer. Part of the reason I'm picking the Giants as well, but I think I like their pitching rotation a touch more. And when they head home to their park, that's a real advantage. And I don't think the Dodgers are going to have quite enough to beat them out. All right, so that will wrap up our review of the baseball playoffs. Certainly been exciting so far. So we'll see how the next set of games develop this week coming. But with that being said, we would like to now take some time to preview the Ottawa Senators 2014-15 NHL season. Ultimately, last season was somewhat disappointing, especially after the results from the prior year, with the mini playoff run they had, injuries aside. Last year was a bit of a regression, maybe a bit to be expected, finishing 11th overall and 5 points out of the playoffs. Though a notch ahead of the Leafs, I will point out as a good old tried and true Senators fan. But Steve, what's your early take on the overall team in general this season? Think they're improving or otherwise?
I think you will see them improve. They're not in the strongest division, especially with teams like Buffalo and Florida at the bottom of it. So there's some points to be had in those games. And I think overall they've got, especially with Bobby Ryan coming back, committing long term, they've got some solid offense up front, especially with their top line of Turris, Ryan, and MacArthur. And with Eric Carlson on D, you've got a perennial Norris candidate there. So I would like their chances to come fourth in the division, behind fourth or third, coming in behind Boston and Tampa and Montreal. Either maybe a toss-up there, third and fourth. But whether they make the playoffs, to be seen. I'm not set on that yet.
Yeah, I will withhold my prediction for the moment, but I see the team as having a chance to improve. A little bit disappointed with the loss of Spezza. I don't think you necessarily fill his shoes very quickly or easily, but they do have some young talent that will get a shot this year. I'm excited about the talent. Don't love, to be honest, that we are so far below the salary cap here in Ottawa. It's a bit of a sticking point with me. The differential in funds they could be spending amount to a pretty decent second or third line that is not on the roster. But that's a chat for another day, perhaps. Let's head into the roster itself, Steve. We'll take a look at the forwards up here first. Ottawa returning what will now be the undisputed top line in Kyle Turris, Bobby Ryan, Clark MacArthur. Steve, your thoughts on this and perhaps the Ryan signing?
Yeah, no, I think that top line, you definitely keep them together. They showed great chemistry to get together last year and put up some great numbers. Bobby Ryan coming back, especially if you've got MacArthur locked up long term, it's got a lot of potential there. And I think the Bobby Ryan signing was very important, especially the way you've had Alfredson leave and Spezza get his way out, even Heatley as well in the past. And even though some may say he's getting a little too much, I think that little extra might have been needed for him to stay. So I think it's worth it, especially like you're saying, with all the cap room that is available.
Yeah, that's just it. And I do wonder, though, and I totally agree. I think they needed to keep Bobby Ryan. You needed to pay him, make sure he's happy and he wants to stay here. But my only concern is why break the bank on players like Bobby Ryan when you spend all this time nickel and diming 98% of your roster. And if they would just go a little bit further here and there, it might make all the difference. But it is what it is. These are the players we have. I do like Bobby Ryan, Kyle Turris, MacArthur, myself. I think they make for a fairly legitimate number one line. I don't know if they crack the top 10 on a league-wide basis, but certainly a top 15 number one line, if you will. Which moves us on to the second, third, and fourth lines, which a lot like the Leafs might have some interchangeable pieces and parts, a little bit of shuffling. I don't think there's anything locked firmly in. I would guess Milan Mahalik, in all my disdain, does get a spot on the second line, of course, with the contract and money he received. David Legwand probably takes the second line center role, which leaves an open spot, possibly for newly acquired Alex Chiasson, one of the younger players, Mark Stone, or Hoffman, to move up. Who do you think fills out the second line, and do you expect to see much from it, Steve?
I don't actually agree that Legwand will be penciled in for sure as the second line center. I think you might want to consider giving Zibanejad a shot there. He's got some more offensive upside for your top six, and Legwand being more experienced might be better suited in the more defensive shutdown role if he's okay with that part. Who knows what the Senators brought him in under the pretense under. That being said, I think I would like to see Hoffman there in the second line winger role if I was an Ottawa Senators fan. I think he showed great speed and great hands last year in the limited games. He's done very well in the AHL, and I think he could definitely keep up with the top end talent in the NHL. He can definitely generate chances based off his speed alone.
Yeah, I really liked him at the end of last season. They got him quite a bit of ice time. And I thought he played really well, along with Mark Stone. They both impressed me. Both did not look out of place. They both did a great job when they were on the ice. Not a lot of obvious mistakes can be pinned on either one of them. I think they helped the team overall, and I'm happy that they made the roster. And speaking of making the roster, recently announced Curtis Lazar will be up with the big club. Of course, he's only 19, provides a lot of potential offensive upside. Steve, how do you think this experiment goes?
I think you might see him be able to stick the whole year. There's not a lot of competition on Senators in terms of the lower depth lines to push him out of there. He's got a friendly contract, which is always a plus to Eugene Melnick up at the top in terms of having to keep the cap hit low and the overall team hit low. I just, that's how I see it. I like his chances.
Yep, I actually I do agree. I like Lazar's prospects. Of course, what he did in the Memorial Cup, winning in OT, was a huge boon for him. So hopefully he carries that momentum through. Hopefully he makes the team here in a meaningful way, where he gets some minutes and not just sat on a fourth line and left there to rot. I'd like to see him, skate a little, maybe even on the power play, see if he can generate there. And I think, as you mentioned, not a lot of competition. We're talking about Eric Condra, Colin Greening, even maybe a Zach Smith at times. It's not been uncommon to see these guys up in the press box before. Don't see any reason why it would be uncommon to see them there this year, and hopefully that opens the door for Lazar.
Yeah,
Uh,
If Matt Cassian can get regular shifts last year, I can't see why Curtis Lazard can't do the same this year.
that's just it. So let's have a quick look at the Senators' blue line, headlined, of course, by I think what we can call perennial All-Star Erik Karlsson, as well anointed the captain of the team. Steve, your thoughts on Erik Karlsson leading the boys?
If you're going to want a number one D, it's hard to pick anyone else other than Erik Karlsson. I think giving him the C is a great move. He may be young, but he's already proven himself to be a leader of that team, and he's shown he's committed to the organization for a while. So I think, as I said, it's going to fit in perfectly. It won't affect his play in any way. After that, though, I'm not really confident in really any of the other Ottawa Senators defensemen. I like Cody Ceci going forward. I think a lot of potential there. He can really develop into someone, even a top pairing defenseman, at least a top four. And Mark Mathod will be dependable, but you're going to need to get him signed long term. And after that, really, especially with Cowan and Greiba, I don't know. I think you need some more speed at the bottom end of your defense there.
Yeah, they do have a few questions. I think the real issue here for the Ottawa defense is it's young and it can and hopefully will mature. There's a lot of truly potential along this blue line. We've seen flashes of it all over the place, but how far will Ottawa's blue line come this year is the question. And just circling back around to Karlsson there, do like that he got the captaincy as well. He is committed for a long time, and I think the aftershocks of Alfredson and now Spezza leaving, it's something I don't think we want to go through again with the loss of a captain. It left a bit of a lack of direction, I think, overall. So nice to see that there. Chris Phillips, he's a bit of a hot button topic. Of course, a huge guy in the Ottawa community and certainly beloved by all fans. But is his on ice play warranting what might be a top four position on the D line this year, or should he be somewhere else?
If I were the one in charge of making the lines for the Ottawa Senators defenseman, I don't even think I'd have him penciled into my top six. I think at this point he's mainly there just for a way to show the young guys how to get and acclimate themselves to the NHL, especially with Cody Ceci maybe. But especially last year, you could see he's really lost a step. He's really struggling to keep up, especially with the younger guys and even in his own zone on the cycle and pushing guys out in front of the net. I just think the time may have passed him, and especially not giving him the captain gives you that out, so to speak, where you can not play him and doesn't look so bad, like a situation the Sabres had with Craig Rivet a few years back. But again, if it's up to me, I think, especially you want your young guys developing, I don't think Chris Phillips should be out there unless it's just because you need an extra guy there in case of injury.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about this off air, the benching of what is now their assistant captain, Chris Phillips. At least he is not their captain. You're correct in that, but I think giving him the obvious move, but at the same time, I think it does make it a little more difficult. I think had he not being named assistant captain, you may have seen him up there a lot more frequently. I personally don't think he should be in the top four. He should probably be in the sixth, if not. I can bear or deal with fifth position, if you will. I suppose they're interchangeable anyhow. But I would like to see some of the younger guys get their chance. He's keeping players like Mark Borowiecki off the ice. Patrick Wierkoch at times. Wierkoch played wonderfully last year when he was on the ice. Just dying to see him out there and his ability to move the puck up ice and generate a little bit of offense. So hopefully Phillips doesn't find as much skating time and a few more games up in the bleachers, but we'll see now that he's assistant. And from the defense to the goal crease, Ottawa returning Craig Anderson and Robin Leonard, both with fresh new contracts. Fairly similar money, fairly similar term, really not much differentiating them financially. So, Steve, do they automatically have a goalie controversy because of that contract situation?
I don't know if it's a controversy. If both of them play well, I don't think they call it a controversy since that's what they want. But I think going in, I think the Senators, Anderson's still your number one guy. He's much more experienced. He does have the higher cap hit, albeit not by that much. Will you see it be a predominant 1-2? I don't think so. I think you'll see Leonard get his fair share, but I think you should go with Anderson going forward, especially since Leonard showed last year that while he wasn't terrible, he didn't prove himself to be the undisputed number one, I don't think.
Can't argue on that last point. He never took the ball and ran with it, as it were, which would have been great to see because he has been in the system for a while now. He is projected as being the goaltender of the future. I am happy to see that they did get a hold of him for another 3 seasons here. That's going to make a difference. My one concern, especially coming into this most recent round of contract talks, is what if he had been scared off by the prospect of this happening with Anderson perpetually moving forward and him never really getting a shot. So it's good to see him in town moving forward. That said, I think I would like to see Leonard given a solid 30-40 games. Find out what he's really made of. I think he's shown over the years in the minor league system and before now, he's putting his time on the bench. He is capable of playing. I don't know if he's ever had the chance to really go out there and win and lose a game night after night. So I'd like to see that opportunity given to him. So I'll take the opposite and I'll go with Robin Leonard there. So in wrapping up with the goaltenders there, we'll maybe lead right into a round of Pick Your Poison for the Ottawa Senators edition. So first up, let's have a look at the forwards here. We had a little bit of a chat about possible second-line wingers. So Steve, going forward for the Ottawa Senators, who are the Ottawa wingers that you see playing, let's say, over 50% up on the second line this year? Pick two.
I think one, as much as you don't have a huge like for him, I think Milan Mahalik is going to be there for sure. He's been at least on the top line in years past and definitely in the top six. He's a mainstay in that unit, and I think you're going to see him not only there, but on the power play as well. Even if he has lost a step, he's still got a very, very good shot. That being said, while I did like Mike Hoffman, I don't know if he's big enough to stay in that role, although he is very quick to avoid contact. I think you're going to see Alex Chason get a big shot in that role, especially being one of the pieces coming for Spezza. I think Brian Murray is going to want to show him off, try and show that we didn't give up so much in terms of not getting back anything. He had a great start, his NHL career, scoring almost a goal a game pace before some injuries hit him, and I like his chances. He's a bit bigger. He can go to the front of the net. I think he's going to have a good season there.
So Chason Mahalik for Steve. I am going to take a second to just rant on Milan Mahalik because I do not want to see him up there. I was outraged at the money given to him this year, especially when other players of, I think, a more important stature, i.e. Jason Spezza, maybe even Ales Hemsky, had he decided to stay, were let go, and B, again, the lack of spending to the cap experienced here in Ottawa. So the money was available, and other money was let to walk. So why necessarily keep Milan Mahalik? But I think we've alluded this a couple of times. Eugene Melnyk is particularly financially sensitive. So for myself, it's down with Milan Mahalik. I say we open up the ice. He was eating up valuable power play time, a lot of minutes on a nightly basis, and I think holding those minutes back from more productive play. I'll take a chance with either Hoffman or Stone for sure. One of the young kids, they've deserved a chance. Let's get them up there. And then Chason, or practically anybody else other than Mahalik, to be quite honest. I'm willing to give Chason a go here. I haven't seen him play a whole lot of hockey, but let's see what he's got. If not, again, I was very impressed by Stone and Hoffman, and maybe they are a touch young, but I will go down with the ship if I have to on this one. And from there, we'll go to the defense quickly. Having a look here. Why don't we throw in Chris Phillips as the number 4 defenseman versus any of the younger players who are 5th, 6th, or 7th, etc.
Yeah, as said before, I wouldn't even be comfortable having Phillips in the 6th slot at this point. And your number 4, I think you're going to want Cody Ceci there. Give him some big minutes, give him some power play minutes, really let him develop. You gave him a lot of responsibility last year. You're going to want to let him grow off that. And similar with, like we said last week, with the Leafs and Riley and Gardner, I think you got to have a little bit of a longer leash with him. Maybe not as much that you do with Carlson, but give him a chance to create some plays, and I think he'll reward you for that. And As also with that, I think compared to Phillips, he's going to be more than adequate defensively, and he'll be able to keep up and more than be able to clear the crease in front of whoever, whether it be Anderson or Landers in net.
Yeah, I can't argue with your Cody Cece call. I love the kid from the Ottawa area as well, so that's always a nice story. But I will actually go with Patrick Weirkoch myself. Might be a bit bullish on him, but I think he could complement Jared Cowan. Not to get into a Jared Cowan debate here, but hopefully Jared Cowan can advance a little bit. But he's certainly more of a stay-at-home defenseman without question. Whereas Weirkoch maybe help get the puck up a little quicker, get the game flow going a little bit better for the Senators when Cowan's on the ice. Whereas Phillips is probably helping to slow things down yet even a bit more. So I will say let's move Philly out of the top four. We'll give him sixth as a nod to his veteran leadership, which I think they will want to keep in the lineup. But Weirkoch to fourth, and let's pair Cece and Phillips on the third unit together, and maybe some power play time. All right, and finally we'll finish up in net. Which of the two tenders do you pick? I think you might have mentioned Craig Anderson before, but are you sticking with that, Steve?
Yeah, I think I'd stick with him. He signed 1 year longer than Lehner, which isn't much, but to Eugene Melnick, it might mean more than to most people. He's got another year of stability there, and especially at not a really huge cap hit, it's not really going to cripple the team in any way. Especially between the two, when it's Anderson or Lehner. Anderson's the one with the playoff experience for you, and as well with Colorado in the past. I think if you want to have success in the playoffs going forward, Anderson's the guy you're going to want to count on.
Well, he certainly is more proven, but as I may have let the cat slip out of the bag as well, I am going with Robin Lehner, so I'm going to take the opposite here. I want him to have those first 40 games while the team's got a chance at a playoff run. See what he's made of. If he succeeds, great. You've got a chance the back half of the way to make this season count and get into the playoffs. If he fails at 40 games, well, he wouldn't have played necessarily a full 40, of course, so Anderson will have already been in there. You might still be able to salvage the season on the back half. But I really just want to see what Robin Lehner has, and if he can help the Senators regain some of their form. So that's it for Pick Your Poison there. Another week's edition in the books. And Steve, I think we're about ready to sign off here. Any closing comments on the way out?
Not too much, other than I'm very excited for the NHL season to start. You just got to insert that one Disney commercial with that little boy right here, and you'll picture me right now.
Good stuff. Yeah, I'm pretty pumped as well. The Senators stealing a couple preseason wins off the Montreal Canadiens. Set me up right good for this week's first game against Nashville. Derek Roy showing up here against the Senators unit, so we'll look forward to that. Otherwise, take care, Steve, and goodbye to all the listeners.